The following is a production of Cary TV, the Town of Cary's government access channel.
Call to order the August 22nd meeting of the Cary Town Council, and at this time I would like to recognize Council Member Smith for our ceremonial opening. Mr. Smith.
Thank you. Let's all stand and pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're now at agenda item A3, the adoption of our agenda. You'll recall that we removed an item from our agenda at the last meeting, ratifying a resolution for action we took at a recent quasi-judicial hearing. Staff advises me that we've received the appropriate resolution and asks that we add this to our consent agenda as follows. New item B1C requests that Council ratify a resolution granting sketch site plan approval for Weston Lakefront offices. We received this information, including the resolutions, via email earlier this week, and it's at each of our seats as well. Is there a motion to adopt the amended agenda with this addition?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. That takes us to item B, our consent agenda portion of tonight's meeting. And for the benefit of people watching our meeting on TV, we're going to take a moment to read our consent agenda items. Please note that one vote approves all of these items. Approval of the minutes. Approval of a tax report. The new item, B1C, that we added to ratify a resolution granting sketch site plan approval for the Weston Lakefront offices, calling for public hearings on annexations, and approving the annexations, rezoning, and comprehensive plan consistency statement for the park at Westlake open space plan. Does Council want any items pulled from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
There's a motion.
Second.
And a second. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. That takes us to item C, which is the recognitions, reports, and presentation portion of our agenda. And I'll once again recognize Mr. Smith, who will recognize the town crier, Mr. Webster, and his lovely wife.
Thank you. John and Mary. How about coming up to the podium here? Got that clapper under control now?
I think so, yeah. That is the plural of a town crier, is a clapper of criers.
Clapper up, right. Thank you. I'm not sure which way I'm supposed to be looking here, but this is really a special week, as we all know. It is the 37th annual Lazy Days here in Cary, and we've got a lot of unique things going on. One, in addition to the 37th anniversary of Lazy Days, the president of our chamber, Howard Johnson, and his wife on that very day are celebrating their 38th anniversary. So I found that kind of interesting, 37, 38. And, oh, by the way, on that same day, myself and my lovely bride, Bridget, are celebrating our 39th anniversary. Oh, wow. So now we have 37, 38, and 39, and to top it off, not quite on that day, but just a day or two earlier, our town manager and his wife have celebrated their 40th wedding anniversary. Let's just give him a hand, would you, for all that he has done. Ben, congratulations. And for all of those special occasions, you'll have to pick which one the town crier decided to come to. But for all of that, we are so blessed to have as our official crier, John Webster, along with his wife, Mary, in full regal attire. And it's not often that we have that, that type of activity to kick off our meetings. As you all know, John has been the Cary Town Crier since 2004, as well as being the town crier for our sister city, Markham, Canada. And it's one of our great ways that we kind of share the bond, share the friendship. And with us tonight, I'd like to recognize the president of our sister cities organization and the liaison to Markham, Canada, Phil and Barbara Shepard. Would you all give them a hand, please? Thank you. So it's really a great week. I've also heard rumors, and this is a little disappointing. It's going to be under 100 degrees. I mean, what fun is Lazy Days when it's not? The idea is to have a hot, steamy day, but I understand the weather's supposed to be stunning. We're supposed to be in the 80s, and I hope that brings a lot of people out. I think last year was a record attendance here. And while John and Mary are in town, in addition to spending Saturday at Lazy Day, they're going to be attending a dinner in their recognition tonight with members of our Sister Cities Association. And along with that, on behalf of the council, I would just like to say, please join me in welcoming John and Mary and expressing the council's appreciation for them taking the time to come visit with us and to participate in this year's Lazy Days activity. With that, I would like to turn the floor over to John for an official town crier opening of our meeting. John, the floor is yours.
The floor is mine.
The floor is yours.
Yes. Now, am I opening the meeting or talking about Lazy Days coming up?
You can do whatever you want, sir. I would say you can open the meeting and say a little bit of Lazy Days.
Oh yay, oh yay, oh yay, and timber. Timber, yes, timber, because be it known that timber will be heard on Academy Street this Saturday, because there will again be the chainsaw artists carving beautiful works of art. And speaking of works of art, Academy Street is alive with art that you must see as you stroll Lazy Days Festival. One of the top 50 festivals in the top festival in all the country. This is the 37th time the festival has graced the streets of Cary. There will be craft booths, there are art booths, there are food booths, and places for beverages. But that's not all. There are demonstrations from the 5 Artist Guild, from embroidery to photography. And speaking of photography, make sure you see the Speak to the Youth of Cary for the Cary Youth Video Project premiere. There will be such merriment and dancing in the streets, the likes of which have never before been seen, and ye are all invited, nay, commanded to attend. This Saturday, in the heart of downtown Cary. Oh, and don't forget to keep an eye open for little Jerry. This cry cried aloud on this day in August in the year of our Lord, 2013, God bless these United States of America, and please sit tight as the court, not the court, but the council is now in session. Your Worship, members of council, ladies and gentlemen, my lords and ladies, I apologize for a few slips in the middle of my cry there. That would not have been a competition-style cry. Sometimes I get my tongue over my eye teeth and can't see what I'm saying. I have been a year since I was here last reporting to you, and in that time I think I have carried Cary's council well by being in different competitions. One of the wonderful things about being a town crier is people come up and say, "Are you a pirate?" And when I explain to them I'm not a pirate, but I'm a town crier, and this is the official uniform of the town crier for the town of Markham, which is now a city of Markham, and for the town of Cary, North Carolina, they say, "Cary, North Carolina? How did you do that? What's it all about?" And I get an opportunity to talk about how great Cary is. I also get the opportunity of talking about how great Cary is when I'm back at my council, trying to say, we should have some art. Do you know the art that they have in Cary? It's all over the place. It's wonderful, and they have a way of doing it. Well, in Markham, we have a saying, you know, you can ride a horse to water, but a pencil must be lead. All we did was form a committee. But a committee is a beginning. It's sometimes an end, too. But I'm really impressed. We came up Academy Street and saw the artwork there, and it is fantastic. You know, it seems that a lot of places, if you mention the word sport, bang, there's all kinds of money and support behind it. You mention art, it depends on whether it's the art that I like. And unfortunately, art isn't just what I like. Art is what everybody likes, because each has their own opportunity of looking at it and saying, "That is beautiful," or "What is that?"
Yeah, what is that?
And both answers are correct. And I think it's great that the people of Cary are supporting artwork all around the community here, so that people have the opportunity to express themselves and the opportunity to learn about what the art is. I think it's marvelous, just marvelous. You mentioned sports, and bang, you can do anything you want. We're trying to build an arena to attract an NHL team, so we'll be able to come down and play your Hurricanes. Boy, that's not easy. We're coming up to an election in another 2 years, and there's going to be some people who are going to have to do some fancy footwork if they want to be back where they were before. I know that because I am a recovering politician myself. And I finally found out why the other guy won. He got more votes. That's the only thing that held me back. It's unfortunate because when a councillor tries to do what he thinks is right, it isn't always popular, and sometimes that creates problems. But it works out in the long run, and I hope all of those that are having elections next year, is it?
No, this year.
This year. Well, I hope to see you all here again. And I'm sure I will, because after all, anybody who votes for art, well, I won't go into that. Ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to bring down some presents. What could a fellow in a red suit and a white beard if he didn't have some presents with him? And Your Worship, I have a letter here from our mayor, Frank Scarpetti. He's hoping to be there after the end of the election, too. There you go, sir. And speaking of art, we are very proud of our art gallery, the Varley Gallery, and this is a book on the Varley Gallery. We have the group of 7 famous artists in Canada. I don't know if they're famous around the world. We think they are. And there's a book on the Varley Art Gallery that we have in Markham.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having us here. We appreciate that.
We're so glad.
And we also have, well, perhaps I can just give these to the clerk, and you can pass these out. There's some little remembrances in there. I believe it's a pen and a keychain so that you'll never be caught without a key to the office or the powder room or whatever, and a pen to be able to write for help or something like that. Anyway, I really want to say thank you for having us here. It's important that the festival continues on, and for me, it would not be the end of August if it weren't for the Lazy Days Festival. Thank you very much. God bless the United States.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just to let you know, when you're counting your 38, 39, 40, we had our 41st this year.
Where did they go?
Thank you all
Sweet.
for being here, and we look forward to seeing you, not tomorrow, day after tomorrow. Wow, that was more fun than I expected.
Yeah, no, meeting's over, right?
Okay, back to business. We're at the Public Speaks Out portion of our meeting. The next two agenda items, Public Speaks Out, which is item D, and our regular public hearings, which is item E, have included instructions for speaking at these forums on the printed agenda. And if you'd like to speak, please take a seat in the rows to my right that are shown as reserved, and follow the instructions on the agenda. Public Speaks Out speakers have up to 3 minutes for their comments, and speakers may speak on anything as long as it's not under a public hearing this evening. We had the public hearings listed on the PowerPoint slide, and we would appreciate if you hold your comments for the public hearings for that time. We have a 3-minute time limit, which I'll have to strictly enforce to be fair to all of our speakers. There's a timer located on the podium, and when the green light turns yellow, that means you have 30 seconds left, and when it flashes red, I'm going to interrupt you, not trying to be rude, but trying to be fair, and I'll ask you to conclude your comments. I thank all of our speakers in advance for adhering to our 3-minute time limit. So now I'll open up the Public Speaks Out portion of our meeting, and I would invite our first speaker forward at this time.
I'm Roger Ehrlich of Cary. I would like to request, I believe that we should be having a public hearing regarding the commitment to a contract on the Veterans Park, because it has been a very closed process thus far, and if we're committing our taxpayers to maintaining this park forever, we need that. I wish I could borrow the tricorn on the subject of freedom and the military. Our James Madison, the father of our Constitution, said, "Of all the enemies of public liberty, war is the most to be dreaded, for war is the parents of armies. From these proceed debts and taxes, the known instruments of bringing the many under the domination of the few." Two-time Medal of Honor winner Smedley Butler noted that he was more like a hitman for capitalism in some, or for corporations in many of like the adventures in the Philippines. And I think that allowing a private group through a very private closed process with the exclusion of the Public Art Board to control this planning of this park is going to be a mistake, and we need to take a step back. I believe that we should honor all veterans and remember all veterans, and that should be the purpose of this park. The foundation was a private foundation. Thousands of and they sort of preempted the naming of this park with Veterans Freedom Park, and that excludes many, many veterans who really see that as a bit of an ideologizing and politicizing. So I'd say if you were to sign this agreement now, that you should scratch out the naming, because that properly belongs as part of the naming process. We need a new public name for what is no longer a private park but a public park, and it's unfair that name has been was chosen at a very politicized time, you know, when I don't doubt the intentions, and I think, you know, we really owe thanks for the people who tried to start this park. But if we're going to be honest, they're sort of at one side, sort of the American Legion side of belief about the role of military and whether we ought to criticize. And it ought to be an open space for reflection. And I know that in just this year, the National Veterans for Peace, which I'm active in, will be having their conference in North Carolina. If you go ahead and approve this with this really closed process and give privileged review for any changes to this process, I don't know, show of hands, how many people have actually read the legal agreement? It gives sort of privileged veto power.
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to interrupt you.
So the only question would be, will the homeless veterans be able to sleep at that park, and will the Veterans for Peace have and other dissident groups have a space at the podium when we have public events?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Good evening. Let me move this up. My name is Lauren Schaefer. I'm a downtown resident. We are downtown business owners, and I'm the president of the Heart of Cary Association. So at the last council meeting, we were here, and some public remarks were made about downtown. And we, on the behalf of the Heart of Cary Association, wanted to respond to a few of those remarks. We just publicly wanted to start off and say how much we appreciate all the efforts that this council and the town has been making as a focus on downtown and making downtown get revitalized. A lot of people grumbled about the Art Center before it opened, and now it is just a magnificent arts venue. I think there were, you had some of your staff at one of our meetings the last week, and they said, I think 157,000 people had been through in the past year, which is just absolutely remarkable. The events like Lazy Days, we are all excited about that, very eagerly anticipating the theater open, the new opportunity site, the park coming, the streetscape projects. We are all very excited and very appreciative that you all made this a priority. Back in July, we took a survey result of our 168 business members, nonprofits, and residents, and we just wanted to quickly, these are the results we passed to you all, so you all could get a firsthand look at what they said. So the favorite thing in downtown, number 1 was the Cary Arts Center, number 2 was Ashworth, 3, Lazy Days tied Academy Street Bistro, and then number 4, the Thursday night concerts, or 7 o'clock rock, tied the events at Page Walker. There were some remarks about that there were not enough, there were too many restaurants, or we didn't need any more. We have seen the exact opposite from people that come downtown, shop downtown, live downtown, pay to be a member of this nonprofit that is downtown. 2 of the 5 on the list are eating venues, and we constantly hear, when can we get more? So, and the one thing missing in downtown was the next category we thought would be of interest to you all. It is nightlife and an upscale bar or a microbrewery. That tripled the results of anything else. A gourmet grocery store was very high on the list as number 2. They said they wanted like a small neighborhood version of Fresh Market or something like the Weaver Street Market. Number 3 was more retail boutiques or a destination retailer that would bring people more into downtown. And number 4 was the coffee shop tied parking. So people are very much still either trying to figure out where to park, because we know there are parking spaces, but sometimes they just don't know where they are. But we just wanted to share this with you all because we can share them on behalf of our 168 businesses, residents, and nonprofits, and just thank you for what you all have done to focus on downtown. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, I'm Krishna. I'm having a question regarding the H7 school that is coming as a high school. So I'm from the Green Level Manners community, and this is the only community that is next to the school. I see in the diagram that the stadium and the school entrance, especially the kids.
Mr. Krishna, I think this is a public hearing, so you'll get 2 more minutes if you hang on till we get to it.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
So I need, okay.
We'll get back to you and I'll call on you.
Thank you.
Anyone else for public speaks out? Speak on anything that's not a public hearing. I see no one. I'll close public speaks out and we'll move to our public hearings. And our first public hearing is item E1, Slade Property Annexation and Rezoning. Ms. Bierman, excuse me, of our planning department will present the staff's presentation. We're going to allow the applicant to present the request. Following the presentations, I'll open up a public hearing and speakers will have 5 minutes for their comments. Council will not act on this evening. Instead, we're going to refer to our Planning and Zoning Board for their recommendation. Ms. Bierman.
Good evening. This is a public hearing on a request to annex and apply the initial Town of Cary zoning to about 39 acres at 925 Pittard Sears Road. This is a vicinity map that shows the property and its surroundings. You can see the golf course to the west. The Amberley PDD was located to the east, the Waycroft Reserve subdivision to the southwest, and a subdivision to the north that's actually in Chatham County. This property is currently in Chatham County. It's outside of Cary's ETJ, so annexation is required prior to applying Town of Cary zoning. The existing zoning is R1 in Chatham County. The proposed zoning is R12, conditional use. And the proposed zoning conditions include limiting the land uses to detached residential dwellings with the maximum density of 2 units per acre, and a condition to enhance the buffer along the northern property line. And this is an exhibit that goes along with that to illustrate the enhanced buffer. This just shows the boundary of the Chatham-Cary Joint Land Use Plan. The site is within the joint plan, and you can see with the red star where that is in relation to the boundary. And this zooms in on that. The land use plan designation is LDR, low density residential. The maximum density in that plan designation in the joint plan area is 2 units per acre, and the applicant is proposing zoning conditions to reflect that. A couple of items to point out related to the plan. The joint plan does recommend that home buyers be notified of proximity to game lands, and in this case, the southern border of the property is adjacent to the game lands associated with Jordan Lake, owned by the Army Corps of Engineers. There is a recommendation from the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission for a 150-yard buffer adjacent to game lands. The Army Corps of Engineers recommends a 50-foot buffer, and we actually received a letter in response to the notification sent out from the Army Corps recommending a 50-foot buffer along that southern boundary. I will point out, too, the Amberley PDD was approved in 1997, which was prior to the recommendations of the Wildlife Resources Commission, and there was a 50-foot buffer applied at that time in Amberley. The other thing I would point out with the joint plan, the plan does state that all new development should provide appropriate transitions. With regard to the property line to the north, the LDO does require a 20-foot landscape easement. 20-foot would be more of a semi-opaque type buffer to the north. The applicant is proposing to enhance the buffer in that area to make a portion of the buffer would maintain a 20-foot width but be planted to an opaque standard, and then another portion of the buffer would be increased to 40 feet with an opaque standard. This shows the stream buffers and floodplains that impact the site. These would be verified at the time of the subdivision. This shows the Cary Parks and Greenways plan. There is a street side trail shown on the south side of Pittard Sears Road, and the green line is the American Tobacco Trail, and that runs adjacent to a portion of the western property line. With regard to the transportation plans, there are no thoroughfares designated on the plan immediate to the site. Pittard Sears Road is designated as a collector. It's designated as a local road. This map shows properties that were notified of the public hearing. You can see those in yellow. Since this is the initial zoning, protest petition is not applicable in this case. I did receive a couple of calls from residents, mostly just with questions and clarification, and as I mentioned previously, I received a letter from the Army Corps of Engineers recommending the 50-foot buffer. That concludes staff's comments, and the applicant is here to provide additional details.
Good evening, Mayor and members of Council. Glenda Topp with Glenda S. Topp and Associates. I'm here tonight representing the property owner, Mr. Slade. And just for some history, Mr. Slade was born in the house that's on the property in 1926, and he has lived full-time on the property since 1943. So he's definitely been around a long time. The property is located on Pittard Sears Road. The request is to rezone from R1 in Chatham County to R12 conditional use in Cary. As staff pointed out, there is a voluntary annexation petition associated with the request. Parcel is located in the joint Chatham-Cary plan. Land use designation is low density with a maximum of 2 units per acre. Our current zoning condition caps the density at 2 units per acre. Since we've started the process, we have gotten clarification as to stream buffers on the property and the amount of land area that is affected by riparian buffers. Due to this, we have provided staff this week with a new condition, and they will be looking at the language, but we are now reducing the density to 1.4 dwelling units per acre, and based on the density of 2 units per acre, roughly the number of units that could be built on the site could have been 75, 76. With the density cap of 1.4, the maximum number of units that we are committing to is 50. And that is due to the information we received on the stream buffers. And just to give you an idea of how much of the land area, and I know one of Ms. Bierman's maps showed that, the north part of Pittard Sears Road is affected by 20% with the riparian buffer. South side of Pittard Sears, it's 39%. And you can see the impact both north and south. So overall, the impact on the riparian buffer over the entire site is roughly 30%. And that is excluding any buffers that are going to be offered by zoning condition, the American Tobacco Trail, and additional open space. So as you can see from the map and the numbers, the site is affected by the riparian buffer. Also want to note that by zoning condition, we've limited the use to single-family detached. In low density in the plan, you can have both attached and detached units, but we've limited to detached. The plan also addresses proper transitioning. Ms. Bierman pointed out what we are providing to the north along the Chatham Glen subdivision. The current code would require a 20-foot landscape strip type B that can be part of the lot. We had a neighborhood meeting. We met with the adjoining property owners. One property owner in particular voiced a concern about what we were providing. So as the exhibit shows, we are providing a 40-foot type A undisturbed buffer. The 20-foot buffer is an opaque buffer also. I want to note that both of these buffers are going to be in common area. They are not part of the lot. We do feel that by making them separate from the lot and maintained by an HOA, it does allow for greater protection of that buffer area and for no encroachment to occur. And do feel that this does give additional protection to the adjacent property owners to the north, as was discussed at the neighborhood meeting. We believe that the request is suitable for the subject property, both by zoning conditions and the requirements in the LDO, that there would be very little, if any, adverse impact on the surrounding properties. The development on the site will be required to meet all LDO requirements. Also want to point out in the staff report it addressed the amount of traffic generated on this site. With the density cap, a traffic study was not required, and the numbers in the staff report addressed homes of up to 75. Now with the number of homes going down to 50, those numbers would be reduced, thus reducing the impact to traffic. Ms. Bierman also pointed out the letter that the town just received recently concerning the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers concerns. With that buffer map, a good portion of the land to the south of Pittard Sears is already impacted by stream buffers and would not be developed, but we'll be meeting with staff in the coming week to talk about that thank you. You can see a good portion of that land is already impacted and would not be disturbed, so we'll work with staff to address that concern. In summary, the proposed rezoning meets the guidelines and standards set forth in the Chatham-Cary Joint Plan. We do believe that the adjoining property owners will be adequately protected, particularly with the new conditions that we have offered tonight. And also want to point out that the builder for the development is here and will speak during the public speaks out. And I'm also here to answer any questions if you have them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Spearman, have you concluded your report?
Yes.
Okay. At this time, I'll open up the public hearing for the annexation and rezoning of the Slade property and invite the first speaker forward at this time.
Hi, good evening. My name is Jeff Logston. I'm the owner of Hearthstone Luxury Homes, which is a custom home building company. We market under the name of Arthur Ruttenberg Homes. I don't have time to explain why I do that, but I do. If you drive through my community, you'll see Arthur Ruttenberg Home signs there. But my company is Hearthstone Luxury Homes. I'm here tonight in support of this project on behalf of future residents of the town of Cary, actually, because I'm currently the builder, one of 3 builders in Waycroft Reserve, which is the project right next door. I opened up a model home last April, so April a year ago, and have sold over 20 custom homes during that time. These homes, the most recent sales have been between $600,000 and $800,000. That, in our industry, is very, very successful in that price range in today's environment, particularly over the last year. And the reason I want to point that out is it's successful because of the attributes of the community. Now, I'd also like to think I built a good house. People like us. Sorry about the blue jeans. I literally was building homes today. I'd like to think that's part of it. But the community itself is very popular because of where it is. It's actually a Durham address. So it's not because of the Cary address. We don't have that attribute right now. Hopefully we will in time. But right now it's a Durham address, town of Cary, Chatham County. And the attributes of the community that is so successful are the privacy, the trees, the lot sizes, and this particular project that we're talking about tonight will also allow that. In Waycroft Reserve, there were 44 lots. We're well over halfway sold out now. Again, very, very successful because it's so popular to these future residents. These aren't necessarily people moving up in Cary. There are some of those, but many of them are moving in from outside the area, from places like Oregon, Pennsylvania, New York, Virginia, Maryland. So they are relatively new residents, but they come there because of the privacy, the access to the tobacco trail. These are active adults and either retirees or getting close to being retired. They've been through many homes typically in their lives, or from a very large 2-story home somewhere else in Cary perhaps, and they're ready to move down into something smaller, but something nice. This is not Carolina Preserve, the Del Webb community. This is not that at all. I'd really encourage you to drive through the community so you can see how successful and how diverse it really is. So since we're so deep into Waycroft Reserve, we're going to run out of lots soon, and this project would allow us to continue to serve that buyer group that doesn't have anywhere else to go. There aren't many places with the lot sizes that we have in Waycroft Reserve. Slade property hopefully will be close in lot size if it's able to be approved as it's being conceived today. The barriers, the buffers of trees, the privacy, it's so quiet back there near the golf course, and the access to the tobacco trail are perfect attributes to this buyer profile. It's not necessarily set up for a young family. There are many, many places places for a young family to buy a home in the town of Cary. There are very few places for I'm going to call it an affluent empty nester or retiree to buy a home that has space. You walk out your back door, you're not looking in your neighbor's back door. There's woods behind all of these homes, and we are getting close to running out of a place for these people to buy. So I'm very excited about the potential of this project and excited about being able to continue with the popularity that we have in Waycroft Reserve today. I have sold, like I said, personally, we've sold 10 or 12 homes this year. We have 3 or 4 more that are coming right now in process, and I'm really concerned we're going to run out of lots before even this project can hit the ground. So I really love you for the sake of this particular buyer profile that doesn't have anywhere else to go, very few communities for them, to allow us to be able to continue to serve that buyer group with this particular project. And so I'm here on behalf of these buyers. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi. Mr. Mayor, council members. It's hard to follow a builder that builds really nice homes, Glenda, who speaks eloquently, and a pirate. Be that as it may, I am the property owner to the northeast on the very corner up there.
Could you state your name for the record?
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Chris Reisig, and I am that property owner. My neighbor, Dean Hoskins, is here also. Our concerns really have to do with the density transition. I know a lot of time and effort was spent with the town of Cary and Chatham County to come up with a joint land use plan. It took, I think, a lot longer than people expected, but a lot of good work was done there. But everybody did recognize there are certain areas where you're going to have to take a little bit harder look than just what the paper says. The paper says a 2 dwellings per 1 acre to a 1 dwelling per 1 acre. In actuality, they're getting ready, they want to put 50 homes on 37 acres. We have 6 homes on 37 acres. I've heard average lot size of about 15,000 square feet. Our average lot size is just over 6 acres. So there is a bit of a density transition there that is, I would ask that your planning department, in accordance with the document, exercise their discretion and truly look as what is being proposed is adequate. I truly think Glenda and everybody else, what they have proposed to start with on the northeast there is a good starting point, but there are a couple other concerns. You say to the south you are going for the 50-foot because there's bow hunting in the game lands. People still hunt in our property and we use guns. I mean, there is that a safety factor that you probably ought to plan into that. It's not done as much as we used to, but it's still a factor that I think you ought to consider and the residents need to be aware of. The other big area, and this gets a little more personal for me, is my well house is about 12 feet off that northeast property line. I would disagree a little with the steam buffer thing because I've seen the way those draws there flood when it rains. So I am concerned that any building up in there would have a negative impact on my well. And we've all been through all the fracking discussions and things like that. I really would not want the town coming and developing and my well get fracked that way, so to speak. So again, I would really ask that we take a harder look at the density and see if we can't take that little extra step that needs to be done, because you guys are moving into our neighborhood. We have a very rural feel to our neighborhood. We have a neighbor that has a sawmill. We have barns. Most of us can't see our neighbors. So that's what we would ask that you do. And then, so those are the 2 things with the density transition. The other aspect I'm going to just raise is the traffic. And I know the town of Cary has done some really good stuff with your roads, and you are limited with the DOT. And I know Chatham County and Wake County are different DOT districts, which makes for really interesting during inclement weather. But back in May, you approved the Ellis property, which is on the corner of Pittard, Sears, and O'Kelly. That came up with a 98 peak trips, or whatever that exact terminology is. No traffic study was required. Here, and I know the numbers just changed, I had seen 82. It'll probably drop a little, but in about 3 months, you're dropping 150, 160 cars onto Pittard Sears that then go on to O'Kelly, and they have to go one or the other way. So yes, I understand the cutoff's at 100, but that's a lot of cars we're starting to put in an area that 3-4 years ago was a gravel road. But other than that, I thank you for the opportunity to come talk to you. Personal note, this is the second time I said Pledge of Allegiance today. I was at a veteran salute over at Carolina House of Cary Assisted Living Center, and the American Legion was doing it for the veterans, and my father's there. So I haven't said the Pledge of Allegiance since I took my boys to 4-H camp, and I did it twice today. So that was kind of interesting. I appreciate it. Any of your planning department, I would love for them to come out and we can walk the property and let you guys really see it. Give us a holler. We'll even make coffee and some danishes for folks. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Anyone else for this public hearing? I see no one. I'll close the public hearing, open it up to council members for discussion or questions or comments.
Go ahead. Ed wants to. I guess a question for Mrs. Bierman. I'm just a little intrigued by the difference of opinion between the Army Corps of Engineers with the 50-foot buffer and the Wildlife Resources Commission, 150 yards. That's 9 times difference. Is there justification given for either of those?
We did make an effort to contact a person with the Wildlife Commission and didn't get a response that we can look into that further. The Army Corps actually owns the property and have some control over it. I would need to look further to see what goes into those more generalized recommendations from the Wildlife Commission.
That would be great if you could do that before it gets to P&Z, as well as perhaps looking into some Mr. Rysick's concerns. I guess that's more addressed to the applicant. But
okay, Ms. Robbins.
No, I was going to say what Ed just said. I mean, I'm familiar with the Waycroft Reserve as a beautiful neighborhood. It's one that we can really be proud of, and so I'm excited to see that they're expanding. But I do think we need to be very sensitive to the neighbors. I appreciate that your application is coming in full compliance with the land use plan, so that's wonderful. We just need to be considerate of those that we're, making neighbors with. So,
We've often heard of this happening before, where multiple smaller developments don't make the threshold. Just speaking to the traffic congestion, have you all looked at that, where they're very close together and they don't necessarily make the cutoff individually, but could cause quite a great deal of traffic collectively?
I would refer that question to, Jerry could answer that.
I would say the best time to be looking at kind of a collective regional type of transportation is when we look at our long-range transportation plan, and this particular road with the types of land uses that were envisioned to be along it, envisioned that just a local road would be satisfactory to carry that type of traffic. As we get these rezonings going through with more intensity, I think that has to have another fresh look, probably with the update of our transportation plan. That's probably the best time to do it when we have more information put together on it.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Could I make one comment, Please. Mayor? I know you've heard this before, and I'm sure everyone's aware of this, but just to reiterate that any of the comments related to the nature of a specific development that's proposed, unless it's reflected in the zoning condition, then there's no way to guarantee that. So.
Okay, thank you very much. This will be forwarded to our Planning and Zoning Board for their recommendation. We now move to item E2, is the H7 High School annexation and rezoning. Ms. Bierman from our planning department will again present the staff's presentation. We're going to hear from the applicant, and following these presentations, we're going to open the public hearing, and I'll invite Mr. Krishnaford, and the speakers will have up to 5 minutes to voice their comments, and the council will not act on this item this evening. Instead, we're probably going to forward it to the Planning and Zoning Board for their recommendation. Ms. Bierman.
Okay. This is a public hearing on a request by the Wake County Board of Education to annex and apply initial Town of Cary zoning to about 88 acres at the northeast corner of Green Level Church Road and Roberts Road, and this is for the purpose of constructing a public high school that has so far been identified as Site H7. This is a vicinity map. The yellow shows the outline of the parcels included in the request. To the east, you can see the Roberts Road Park that has not been developed yet, but that will be developed in the future. The other green area that you see, most of that is property that's owned by the Town of Cary. A portion of that is, or a good bit of that is also conservation easement area that was associated with a project related to White Oak Creek and some funding from the Clean Water Management Trust Fund. So that's why you see so much green in that area. The area to the south and west is the town of Apex, ETJ. There is, as I mentioned, an associated annexation petition. You can see the site in relation, again, to the Apex ETJ, which is in this area, and the areas in yellow that have already been annexed. And this is just an aerial view that's a little more closer view of the site. The existing zoning is R40 in Wake County. And the proposed zoning is R40 with the town of Cary. This shows the land use plan. The site is in the southwest area plan. The designation for the yellow portion of the of the site is LCR, which is low density conservation residential, and then the portion of the property that's associated with White Oak Creek is in the parks and open space category. According to Cary's GIS maps, the site is impacted by stream buffers and also a portion of the floodplain for White Oak Creek. The Cary Parks and Greenways plan shows existing and proposed greenways in the vicinity of the site. There are no greenways shown on the site, but you can see the proposed greenways adjacent with the Roberts Road tract, or the Roberts Park site, Roberts Road Park, excuse me. Cary Transportation Plan shows Green Level Church Road as a major thoroughfare and Roberts Road as a minor thoroughfare. Would point out here as well, as part of the site plan process, assuming that the school is built here, we would be working with or coordinating with DOT and the town of Apex and the town of Cary to look at the road issues, and particularly Roberts Road, and that could result in some realignment of the road to try to improve the traffic flow through that area. A traffic study was not required as part of the rezoning. There's not a substantive change in the trip generation as a result of changing from the R40 in Wake County to the R40 for the town of Cary. However, because the school would be larger than 100,000 square feet, there would be a quasi-judicial process associated with the site plan, and the traffic study would be provided at that time. This is a map that shows the properties that were notified of the public hearing. Again, because this is an initial zoning, protest petition is not applicable. I did receive several phone calls inquiring about the site, the process, and how we would be proceeding. That concludes staff's presentation, and the applicant is here.
Okay, and I would invite the applicant forward at this time.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. My name is Christine Hilt, and I'm a landscape architect with CLH Design, 400 Regency Forest Drive here in Cary. And I am representing Wake County Public Schools tonight as the petitioner. In 2006, the Wake County School Board identified a target ring, and this site is within that ring for the future H7 high school site. So for 7 years, the school board has identified a high school needing to be in this area. In 2008, the school system, along with the town of Cary, jointly developed a master plan for this 87-acre site that includes a high school and a park for the town of Cary. So for 5 years, we have identified that master plan as being a very integral part of this site. What we are doing now is we will be submitting a site plan to the town in November. It is a quasi-judicial hearing, so the public will have an opportunity to speak then. But the school board also has a mandate and a responsibility to have public hearings. So in May, at the end of May, there was a meeting at Mills Park Middle School where the adjacent property owners, same notification as the town of Cary, met to discuss the any issues they had or concerns they had about the high school. This will not be the only public meeting that the school system has. These are the taxpayers of Wake County, and it is a public responsibility to make sure that the school is a good neighbor. A traffic impact analysis has been submitted to the North Carolina Department of Transportation. We are beginning dialogue after the initial review with the Department of Transportation. We are now beginning dialogue with the town of Cary and the town of Apex. We are in Apex's, we're right against the ETJ, so we want them involved as well. We have identified up to 6 different intersections that will be reviewed as a part of the TIA with improvements involved. We also will be making full improvements on Green Level Church Road and Roberts Road as is required by the town of Cary. We do identify that we do have a definite impact in this area, and we want to work with the neighbors. But we also identify that a high school is a very, very important part of this community and very, very much needed. In relationship to the rezoning, I'll keep my comments very, very brief. It is always important to the school system in rezoning a piece of property that it is not a higher impact. Wake County zoning for this property is R40. This rezoning will be to R40 in the town of Cary. That allows a school, both the county allows schools in R40 and the town of Cary allows schools in R40. It also allows for a park, so if you have any questions about the rezoning, I'll be glad to answer them, but this is not to increase the impact in this area. Schools are allowed in the previous zoning and this current zoning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Betty Parker, Real Estate Services Director with the Wake County Public School System. I just wanted to take a quick moment to voice our support for this project and the collaboration we've enjoyed with your staff. Over the last several years, we've been able to work through a master planning process that we think is really developing something special for this area. The Greenway map that you've seen is just to hint at what's to come. With all the amenities that'll be there with the high school, we're looking at a very meaningful partnership to be able to interconnect some of the trails with the trailhead on this campus, some of the facilities that are there, along with the park as it begins to develop to our east. So I just wanted to say kudos to our staff. We started with Mary Henderson before she retired. Doug McCraney has expertly taken over, and we're just very excited about the opportunities for this site. So we appreciate your consideration tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bierman, do you have anything else to add?
I'm not sure. Just as a heads up, there may be some question related to the timing with when the traffic impact, the traffic impact study is being performed. There's no question with that moving forward. But I think we may need to go back and look at how the final language with the ordinance works for the timing of that in relation to the subdivision or in relation to the rezoning versus a quasi-judicial process at the end. So we will take a look at that to make sure procedurally we're going through that in the right manner, which could result in having some of the conditions related to the traffic study move forward up to the rezoning stage if we find that that's the appropriate timing for that. So just to give you a heads up in case some of the procedural aspects of this get altered just a little bit.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. This time I'll open up the public hearing, and I'd like to invite Mr. Krishna back to begin the public hearing, and then I'll invite other speakers after Mr. Krishna. And again, I apologize for having to interrupt you, but I wanted to make sure you were at the right place.
Yeah. Thanks for calling me back. Actually, I'm not sure this is the place I need to talk about this one. I have a map of the school over here, the diagram, how it is going to be placed, where the school building is going to be, where the parking lot and everything is going to be. So I live in the community next to it, which is Manners. So I see like there is not a big buffer from the stadium, from the school stadium where they build. I know that, and also the parking lot and the school entrance for the students. So because it's very close to the neighborhood, so is there any opportunity to move it to the other side, little bit away from the community, because kids are going to be on the road in the morning for the school and everything, So it's just a concern. So any changes to the plan that can be appreciated, like moving it away a little bit from the community, maybe to the school building this side and parking lot and entrance to be on the other side, something like that, So that's all I want to say. So
Thank you, Mr. Krishna.
Thank you.
And we usually don't have an interaction, but I want to tell you that this is the rezoning, and so what you probably see is conceptual, and it's probably not final by any means. I'll look at Ms. Bierman in case I'm wrong. And so the public input process is going to help you address some of the issues that you have.
Thank you.
Next speaker for this rezoning. Anyone else? Okay.
Yeah.
Could you move to your left? Thank you.
Sure. My name is Viru Gane, and I am the future resident of the same community where Krishna is. And I saw some of the plans, conceptual plans, what town of Cary has. And in general, what my opinion is, high school means the students will be a little bit, they are like young drivers and everyone. And then there is a high school. So the roads, what on the Roberts and on the Green Level Church, or doesn't have the dividers. Usually high schools will have some new drivers coming on the roads. So better to have the road facility developed first and then the school. And already we see a couple of times the people are coming there to practice the driving because it doesn't have any traffic today. When it comes to the high school, when the high school is there, I see that kind of trend may continue there, and we want a bigger roads first and with the sidewalks. And the other thing is, if I see the town of Cary Park adjacent to it, I don't know if the entrances has to be planned first and then the school, because if you see the park site, that is towards our community there. And tomorrow we should not be going into a deadlock state where we don't have proper entrance to the park. So if we can conceptually plan the park first, all the entrances to the park, such a way that it doesn't impact to the community there who are next to the park, and then plan for the school site and all that. I think that may work much better. That's our. If you see the plan there for the town of Cary Park, it's kind of cornered, and we don't know where the entrances is going to be once the school is formed here. So, and one more thing is, like in the plan, you're giving an entrance to the park from the community, and the community is going to the dead ends. I mean to say, it doesn't have any exit. So we feel from the community side, so it doesn't, the entry into the community and into the park doesn't really serve the purpose. Instead, that has to be a cul-de-sac so that the public from the park doesn't land up in the community. And moreover, the entrances for the park has to be first. I don't see enough room for all these entrances, either from the Green Level Church or from the Roberts, and the school side is really covering that. That's all what I have for today.
Thank you. I want to do some clarification for you. What we're doing tonight is a rezoning, and what that means is what is the best use for this piece of land. We're not talking about anything else. The quasi-judicial hearing will talk about site plan issues. Where's this thing going to be? Where are the entrances going to be? Where's everything going to be located? That will be later. And they talked a little bit about that. And they also talked, the applicant, by the way, is not the town of Cary, it's the school board. And they also talked about doing traffic impact analysis, which will determine what kinds of road improvements. And I think I heard they were doing 5 different locations. So there could be improvements in several places to address some of the traffic issues. I know it's very confusing, but what I would invite you to do is stay involved. And if you have any questions, you can contact our staff, or you can contact the representatives for the school board, and they'll be glad to help you with the information, because I know the first time you hear this, it's very confusing what we're doing and why we're doing it.
Yeah.
So thank you for
Usually
speaking.
the request there is like, okay, yeah, rezoning. Prior to that, we would like to see the roads and dividers for a high school. Yeah.
And they can work with you on that.
Thank you.
Anyone else to speak at this public hearing? See no one, so I'll close the public hearing and open it up to council members for questions or comments. Mr. Yerha?
The staff report mentioned that there were several historic, old, let's say old instead of historic, to make people happy, structures on the property, one of which is the Lassiter Sloan House. Although this may be more of a site plan issue too, but I did take the liberty of contacting Gary Roth from Capital Area Preservation, who gave me a little history of the house, as well as the Lassiter family and the Sloan family. The Lassiter family used to own the mule business in town. At any rate, he told me a little bit about the house, and then he added in his email in bold letters, the house is definitely worth saving. So I know it's early in the process and maybe premature to talk about this, but if there are plans for that house, if the plans call for demolishing it, I would suggest certainly getting in touch with Gary. I would be happy to work with you as well to see what can be done. Hopefully, the plans don't call for that as we move along. But I wanted to raise that because these things take a while to happen.
Okay, other comments?
Yeah, I just want to thank the school system. This has been a long time coming. We're actually now getting to the rezoning stage, which means we're getting one step closer to the building another high school stage. So anything that we can do to help that process along, we're more than willing to help you guys out. And I'm just going to put a plug out there for East Cary High School.
Anyone else?
I just had a question for Mary. Mary, as we look at the map, see that little vertical piece of land between the R40 subdivision and the school systems? Yeah. So we're creating a little donut hole there, and I was just curious as to who the property owner was. If we know it's not the town of Cary, I take it. It's not the school system, I take it. And
that's a separate property owner.
Private. Okay. Just something to think about.
Okay. No other questions. This will be forwarded to the Planning and Zoning Board for their recommendation. We now move to item E3, the Ashton Woods proposed collector, 13 CPA 04. Mr. Delk from our engineering department will present the staff's presentation. I'll open up the public hearing. Speakers have 5 minutes once again, and the council will not act on this item this evening, and we're going to refer it to our Planning and Zoning Board for their recommendation. Mr. Delk.
Yes, the case we have before you tonight is a comprehensive plan amendment for proposed Collector Street near Arthur Pierce Road and 1010 Road near Kildare Farm Road. The request is to shift the proposed roadway alignment across the property. That's the Jones Family Farm subdivision, Ashton Woods subdivision that came to council a few months ago. They also asked to change the designation from a collector avenue to a collector street. This request was initiated by the town engineering department. This has been a change that we have identified that needed to be updated in the CTP update with the community plan this go around. But now that there's a development proposed for the area, we wanted to clean that up and get this straightened out while we had the chance. You can see that the street is part of the proposed collector street system between this 1010 Road and Arthur Pierce Road. It's about a mile long across for this block of area down there, so it's a connector that's needed in the area. As I stated before, the rezoning was approved at the June council meeting. The current alignment that you see on the maps today was created back in 2001 when it was being planned. I believe it was about the exact same time that the Grenadier subdivision that's to the north was being built. Needless to say, the Jones Farm was where it was today. The proposed changes translated to more right-of-way dedication for the developer, but it does allow them to have better connectivity in their subdivision, as well as allowing driveways along the streets, and it helps reduce the direct impacts to property owners nearby. The change in the designation, as you can see here, is from a collector avenue, which is a 70-foot right-of-way with a median separated. It also has a limited number of driveways that can be used on it, to a collector street, which allows driveways, and the current alignment that goes across the property is about 1,000 feet long. What the developer proposes with the change is almost twice that, so they are doing quite a bit to help the connectivity of the system by adding these other stretches. Notification was sent to the property owners earlier this month. There are 22 property owners that are in the 400-foot buffer around the area, the proposed change. 8 are directly affected. Advertisements went in the Cary News, and the properties were posted. This is a little larger view of the street system in the area, showing the thoroughfares around the larger block, as well as the collector streets that are connected nearby. As noted in the rezoning case, the collector street that we are talking about tonight does have a street side trail located along its edge, so that would be something that during the site plan review we would be looking for as an amenity that would go along with the collector street, specifically from the south side. This is because there is a planned or proposed park in this area to the south that greenway connection with that street side trail would connect to as we further development in the area. The developer of the subdivision has been in close coordination with the neighbors pretty much through the rezoning and the whole development process. In addition to previous meetings talking about the subdivision, he's met with the folks highlighted in the red stars here in a meeting on July 31st. He worked with them and their concerns with the roadway connections, and has helped alleviate those concerns to the point that he indicated us in an email detailing that meeting that there's no opposition to this from the Grenadier neighbors. Highlighted on the map before, we also talked with a number of citizens since we posted the property, the streets. The ones to the north spoke to 3 different citizens that were not opposed to the changes. There was actually more questions about the section to the north of it, which after talking to them a little bit about the CTP update and how it creates a whole system and what happens across 1010 Road, they were okay with us moving forward with looking at how to fix that during the CTP update. The property owner to the south also sent us an email that said they supported the proposed changes. It's the section that's over, the portion that's closer to Arthur Pierce Road. Cary's land development ordinance includes 4 criteria that should be considered when we amend comprehensive plan based on the rezoning and the request and site plan submittals that we've seen from the subdivision. Developer staff believes that this request is appropriate based on the second criteria, that it gives us the opportunity to realign the proposed collector to increase both short-term and long-term connectivity and to reduce future property impacts. And with that, as indicated in the staff report and the fact that the engineering department has started this CPA process, we support the request and recommend it be forwarded to planning and zoning. And that's the end of my presentation. Okay. Welcome to open it for public hearing.
All right. At this time, I'll open the public hearing for the Ashton Woods proposed collector and would invite the first speaker forward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Jason Barron here on behalf of Ashton Woods. Todd has covered everything fairly thoroughly. I would just say and remind you, you all zoned this property back in June, and we fully support the proposal that's before you today. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker for this public hearing. Anyone at all? Close the public hearing, open it up to council members for questions, comments, discussion.
Will the realignment then connect to Shelmont Drive? Is that the stub that ends there?
Yes, it will connect to Shelmont Drive. So the realignment is basically this section from where it crosses Shelmont Drive now down to the edge of the property where it connects here. The applicant is adding this adding the section here to meet that requirement, as well as doing Collector Street all the way to Arthur Pierce so that the short-term connectivity would be better in the time being before and if that property ever develops down there.
And Shelmont Drive is not a private road? Is it a town road?
It's a private road in Wake County on Wake County right-of-way.
Ah, okay. Thank you.
The only question I have has to do with driveway cuts on the neighborhood collectors. It's my recollection that we have a policy that discourages driveway cuts on those main drags through neighborhoods because we had the speeding problem and then we were going back with traffic calming. I just have some reservations about that. And there's a lot of driveway cuts on this major thoroughfare. Are they doing anything to proactively address the issues that invariably come up with speeding and cut-through traffic?
We discourage driveway cuts on collector avenues. So
this doesn't count because it's a
this
collector.
is a collector street, which would have a little bit less traffic because of the size of the neighborhood. The collector avenues typically carry more traffic and are connected to more neighborhoods than this.
What's the threshold for that?
Typically about 3,000 cars a day.
Okay.
So on this one, I know that just seeing some of the preliminary plans on the site that there's a lot of landscaping in terms of like trees along it, and some of the sites on it aren't oriented. We'll have driveways on the side streets instead. We've just seen the first phase of the property actually, which is the side basically from over here at this time, but this is a preliminary layout that they had given us earlier on.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay, this will be forwarded to the Planning and Zoning Board for their recommendation. We're now going to move to item E4. It's an annexation public hearing for 13A07. Mrs. Grannon of our Planning Department will present the staff presentation, and then we'll open up the public hearing, and the council may act on this evening. Ms. Grannon.
Thank you. This is a request that was submitted by the property owners of approximately 45.2 acres of land located at Green Level Church Road, approximately 1,800 feet south of the Morrisville Parkway and Green Level Church Road intersection. The request also includes 1.34 acres of adjacent right-of-way. The property is located in Cary's ETJ and is currently zoned residential 40 and is within the Conservation Residential Overlay District. The request has an associated subdivision plan, which is currently in review, plan number 13 SB002, formerly known as the Williams Tract, under the name Bellwood Manor. This proposed development is for 75 single-family lots. Annexation of the property is required before the subdivision plan could be approved. This concludes staff's presentation, and I'm available for any questions following the public hearing.
Okay. At this time, I'll open up the public hearing for annexation 13A07 and would invite the first speaker forward at this time. Anyone to speak at this public hearing? I see no one. I'll close the public hearing. Questions, comments, motion?
Make a motion to approve annexation 13-A07.
I'll second.
There's a motion, second. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. That takes us to item F1. It's a quasi-judicial hearing, subdivision and site plan 13SP021 Verizon Wireless. And at this time, we're going to say goodbye to our town attorney and hello to Attorney John Silverstein and invite him to the table. And as he comes to the table, I'll continue. As I said, this is a quasi-judicial hearing. An overview of the hearing procedures or detailed rules are attached to the printed agenda. Speakers who want to speak during this public hearing must be administered an oath by the town clerk. We're going to pause just a moment so that if you plan to speak and you haven't been given an oath at this time, that you go to the town clerk at this time and receive that oath. And while that is going on, I'm going to go from my right to left and ask council members if they've had any site visits, ex parte communications, financial relationships, special knowledge, or close relationship to an affected person to disclose. Ms. Adcock.
No, sir.
No.
No. I can say that I drive by that several times a day, so I've seen the sign. I know exactly where it is. Did receive an email, and as soon as I saw the first sentence of it, I closed it and didn't read it. But I know it was pertaining to that. Mr. Frantz.
I was at Lowe's this weekend, and I have a Verizon phone.
Okay. Ms. Bush.
I received the same email and did not read it.
I received the same email also and didn't read it. And I have an AT&T.
Very good. Everyone appears to have been sworn in, so I'm going to open the quasi-judicial hearing and recognize Mr. Hales of our staff, who's going to introduce this item. Mr. Hales.
Thank you, and good evening, Council. As you mentioned, the next item on tonight's agenda is a request for approval of a subdivision and development plan for a new commercial outparcel at the existing Lowe's Home Improvement Center located on Walnut Street. The current site's about 13 acres, and the proposed subdivision is about a 1.1 acre outparcel. Property is located in the southwestern quadrant of the intersection of Walnut and Meeting Streets. Walnut Street and Diller Drive are both identified as thoroughfares on the town's comprehensive transportation plan. According to the plans, both of those roads are consistent with the current CTP requirements, and no additional road widening or pavement in lieu are required as part of this development. The parcel is surrounded by other commercial, retail, restaurant uses. McDonald's is directly to the north, as well as H.H. Gregg, which took the old Circuit City. Centrum at Crossroads is across Diller Drive to the south. Crossroads, obviously, across Walnut Street to the east. Both Walnut Street and Diller Drive are served by regional transit services, including Triangle Transit and C-Tran. Town of Cary Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources Facilities Master Plan does not indicate any improvements necessary on this parcel as part of this development plan. However, just to update the council, there is a proposed street side trail along the southern side of Diller Drive, which would be across the Centrum and Crossroads frontage, as well as on the southern side of Piney Plains Road, which is a couple parcels away to the north. Current land use designation of the property is commercial. As you can see here, it's surrounded by other commercial uses with a few office institutional uses in the area. It's located within the Crossroads mixed-use overlay district, which is identified as a regional activity center in the comprehensive plan. Current zoning on the property is general commercial conditional use. This dates back to the early 90s, and the conditions on the property have some minor use restrictions in regards to no more than one restaurant, which would be the McDonald's. And there's some signage restrictions and some conditions in there that relate to the streetscape along Walnut Street. The property is currently developed as a big box retail store, Lowe's Home Improvement Center. Parking is located to the north of the building between the intersection, or towards the intersection of Walnut and Meeting Street. There are currently approximately 508 parking spaces on the site. The western portion of the parking lot for Lowe's is often used for seasonal outdoor display and sales. We recently changed the ordinance a year and a half ago or so to allow between March and June outdoor display and sales in parking lots. So that's going to factor in heavily to the parking reduction, which we'll talk about a little bit later. In relation to that, there is a 10% reduction in the requirement for Lowe's. So while there are 508 parking spaces actually on the site, only 457 of those are considered required. The area of the site they're proposing the impact, like I said, is at the intersection of Walnut Street and Meeting Street. Approximately 60 parking spaces would be affected. Part of that is just saw cutting the asphalt and repaving it and moving some landscape islands. Approximately half of those 60 parking spaces would be replaced. The Verizon site includes 31 parking spaces on the proposed outparcel. This is the proposed layout. The building is located between the revised parking lot and the intersection. as I said before, it's about a 1.1 acre out parcel. The property lines they're proposing are shown here in blue. The store itself is approximately 5,500 square feet. They'll be adding additional sidewalk along the southern side of Meeting Street to increase pedestrian connectivity within the area. McDonald's on the opposite side of Meeting Street just did the same thing. Dumpster enclosure would be located on the Meeting Street side, giving the orientation of this new out parcel toward the intersection. There's visibility really on all sides of the building, so the most or least visually intrusive site we can come up with for that is on the farther into the Meeting Street side. The architectural rendering of the property, it's basically a one-story flat roof with a parapet brick building. Accent would be limited to the black canvas awnings and some accent lighting along the pilasters. All three of the facades, the one facing the parking lot, the one facing to the south, and the one facing Walnut Street will have storefront, as you can see here. The facade you can't really see as a service facade, and that's the one that's facing diagonally away from Walnut Street toward Meeting Street. It will have all the required architectural treatment, just won't have windows. So the reason we're here tonight, the applicant has requested as part of this site plan a 25% reduction to the parking requirement for Lowe's. And I'll take a few minutes to go into this in a little more detail because the staff report it's very difficult to explain in writing. As I mentioned before, there are 508 parking spaces on the site. Of those, only 457 of those are considered required by the current site plan, and that does represent a 10% reduction. With the development of the site, the building and its associated changes will impact the parking, obviously, and that does, in addition to removing some of the parking, approximately 30 or so parking spaces, it also increases the parking demand on the site. So you end up with two retail sites. The new Verizon location with the 5,500 square foot building would require 21 parking spaces. However, they're providing 31 just because of the way the property lines got drawn. So that's 141% parked. The new Lowe's site actually ends up with 432 spaces, but a requirement of only 381. The 381 spaces represent 75% of what's required by the ordinance based on their square footage and uses. So that's the technical request, is a 25% in the actual parking requirement. If you take the amount of parking spaces that will be provided, take out the 51 parking spaces that they were allotted to use for outdoor storage, which is staying the same, it represents overall between the two sites a 22% parking reduction in the requirement. Outside of March to June, when the outdoor display and sale isn't really permitted, it only represents a 12% parking reduction in the two together. So the majority of the year, it's really only a 12% reduction, but from a technical standpoint, it is a 25% reduction in the Lowe's parcel alone. Hopefully that didn't confuse everybody, but if so, we'll get it fixed. That concludes staff's presentation at the moment. The applicant will be here to present their case. Following that, I have slides summarizing the motions. There's only the one minor modification request, so it's a fairly straightforward worksheet this time. But thank you.
Thank you. We'll call on the applicant's attorney to present the arguments and evidence in support of the application by addressing the applicable approval criteria.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I'm John Cook. I represent Lowe's Home Centers. My address is 150 Fayetteville Street, Raleigh, North Carolina, 27601. I'm going to hand to Ms. Rowland what's already been marked as Exhibits D through I, and I will just tell you quickly what they are. They are the resumes of the people who are testifying. I'm not sworn in to testify. I'm just trying to organize the information for you, along with an illustrative exhibit that tries to organize who is going to speak on which of these items that's before you. So I have about 3 or 4 things I want to mention to you, and they're principally just to try to organize and put this into context. Mr. Hales did a very nice job with all the details and facts, and I'm not going to get into that. I just want to explain to you that some time ago, Lowe's Home Centers entered into a contract with a company called Concord Properties. And the contract was that they would sell this portion, this proposed site plan, subject to the conditions that Concord Properties get whatever approvals they need from the town to build what they want to build on that property. So Lowe's hasn't been working on this project in that sense. They've carried the ball here. And they have been looking at the staff's files. They've been working on this since about December 2012, I think. So once they answered all the staff's concerns about the proposed site plan, then it ripened the issue for the question of how many parking spaces should there be on the Lowe's site if the site plan is approved. And my principal focus here is Lowe's Home Centers, which right now owns both tracks, but the contract contemplates that there be a separate track and a separate site plan. And so that's why Lowe's is here, and really, this hearing didn't come to Lowe's attention until about 2 weeks ago, and so I got a call about a week ago and saying we have a hearing and we need somebody to represent us, because under your policy rules, Lowe's can't represent itself. It has to retain counsel and a quasi-judicial proceeding. So that's why we're here tonight. The second thing I'd like to talk to you about is that the minor modification, the first criteria, it's worded as modifications in that guideline that you got. I just want to mention that there really is only one modification that's being sought for the Lowe's site plan, and that's regarding parking spaces, which under your LDO, you're able to grant this modification upon the showing of certain information and evidence, and the staff report does a very nice job in explaining that. And attached to the staff report is a parking study that we'll have the person who prepared that testify about. Lowe's position in this matter is very simple, and that is we view this as a compatible infill. The Verizon store is located across Walnut Street. They would move to this site. That it enhances pedestrian safety. That's what your staff report says. And eliminates unnecessary parking spaces, which is just dead use, which better utilizes this particular block of property. Hopefully you've received or will receive Exhibit 8, which is just illustrative, but that basically took the guidelines that were attached to your agenda and said, well, here are the people who are going to speak about each one of these criteria and what the evidence is going to be, and I won't go through that. But I will say to you this, that our plan is just to come up here, one witness at a time, testify about everything that they need to testify to, and sit down, so we don't do this in a piecemeal fashion. We're going to try to do this as efficiently as we can. In summary, Mr. Irvin is the Concord Properties witness. He's the officer who can testify about there. But everybody else is a professional engineer licensed in the state of North Carolina that's got experience in the fields that they're going to be testifying to. The witness order is going to be, Mr. Stevenson's going to be first. He's the traffic engineer, and he's the one who sealed the traffic of the parking study report, and he will speak to those various items that deal with transportation and traffic. Next will be Mr. Rollins. Mr. Rollins is in-house engineer for Lowe's. His purpose will be to testify about Lowe's experience regarding needing parking, and also to testify as to the property owner's position regarding these requests. Mr. Irvin is the officer in Concord Properties. He's simply going to testify that they are seeking this site plan and they comply, and they've tried to comply with the LDO. And then finally, Mr. Garcia, who is the civil engineer that drew the plan that's part of the site, that's the site plan that's before you tonight. And that's the order of our testimony. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Ronald Stevenson. I'm a traffic engineer with Ramey Kemp and Associates, 5808 Farrington Place, Raleigh, North Carolina. Have a Bachelor's of Science degree and Master's of Civil Engineering degree from North Carolina State, and I'm a registered professional engineer in the state of North Carolina. My profession is I work as a traffic engineer, doing traffic engineering studies, transportation planning studies, parking studies for Ramey Kemp and Associates, and I've been doing that for a little over 12 years now. My resume is included, I believe it's Exhibit G, and that resume was prepared by me and our firm and is true and accurate representation of my work and experience. So we prepared a parking study for this existing Lowe's site that you have seen, and the purpose of that study was to look at and determine the number of parking spaces that are utilized at that facility during its peak time. And so we went out and did this inventory study on a typical weekday as well as a Saturday, and we felt like Saturday would be the highest use time, and we did this in April, and we did it on days where the weather was really good. And we thought there would be a lot of folks maybe there to visit the outdoor section. So we did it on those days to try to capture the true worst time. And as you've heard, the facility currently has over 500 spaces, and the peak parking space occupancy that we determined in our study was 291 spaces, and that was occupied parking spaces. And that happened on a Saturday afternoon. So if we have a 25% reduction, it would go down to 381 spaces required by the town for the Lowe's. Given the 291 spaces that were actually occupied, it would leave about 90 spaces remaining that were not occupied by vehicles. I know some of those spaces were occupied by seasonal sales and outdoor sales, but there's 90 additional spaces that could be utilized by vehicles. The Verizon store, as you've heard, would provide an additional 31 spaces, which is also, as you heard, is more than enough to accommodate its demand. So we really have a total here of 421 parking spaces between Lowe's and Verizon. And as was indicated earlier, that's about a 22% reduction. So there is adequate parking here for this item. In addition to that, the Verizon store is a relatively low traffic generator, and so on its own, it's not expected to generate a lot of trips that would really impact the roadways. As is indicated in the staff report, the surrounding roadways were built out based on the comprehensive plan, and they generally are operating pretty well. So this additional traffic that would be generated by the Verizon store would not be expected to have an impact on those surrounding roadways. So based on the parking study that we've looked at, it's my opinion that this proposed plan would provide for mitigation for traffic congestion impacts reasonably expected to be generated by the Verizon store. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, council members, good evening. My name is Rip Rollins. I am Lowe's in-house attorney, 1605 Curtis Bridge Road, Wilkesboro, North Carolina. My resume has also been provided in the exhibits. I am here representing Lowe's. I reviewed the parking study prepared by Ramey Kemp and Associates. That report and the findings are consistent with what we have seen at this location and other locations throughout the country. Generally, the need for parking is much less than ordinances and what is often installed. Lowe's doesn't want to create a negative impact or, take away parking spaces that customer demands would require so that customers aren't serviced by the store. We've looked at it, and at the same time, we don't want an excess of parking. We can better use this area for infill developments such as the Verizon, and this is something that we've done throughout the country. The LDO has offered opportunity for the parking reduction. We feel like those criteria are met. And, of course, none of this is possible without council support. And Lowe's in general is supporting the project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jeff Irvin. I'm with Concord Properties, and I'm a partner in the firm. We do retail development pretty much throughout the eastern United States. Our interest is developing the plan as shown on behalf of Verizon Wireless. And the reason they are interested in doing it and we're excited about working with the town of Cary is because they feel it will enhance the customer experience at this location, and also it's going to really increase the site awareness for them in this location. So that's pretty much all I have to say. We do, and we'll do, and have worked with the city, and more importantly, the staff, pretty much as they've requested. So, but on a personal note, it's important for me to tell you folks sitting up here, this has been a fairly rigorous process. It's been a little while in the making, but your staff throughout this entire process has been extraordinarily informative and responsive and courteous. And so as a developer who, we run into all types, I just want to let you guys and ladies know that it's greatly appreciated. So thank you.
Thank you.
Charles Garcia with Freeman and Kaufman will answer all the technical questions. Thank you.
Hello, Charles Garcia with Freeland and Kaufman, civil engineering firm out of Greenville, South Carolina. Do you need the address? Okay, it's on the plans if you do. Graduate of Clemson University, you have my resume there. I am a PE in various states, work all over the country. Specifically to this project, I am registered in North Carolina. And I've been with Freeland and Kaufman for 18 years doing similar things, not in the same role, but I've got a good bit of experience. We attended the pre-application meeting with staff, and as Jeff said, as I said earlier, I work in all kinds of places throughout the country, and this is not an easy process by any stretch, but it is laid out, and staff has been great. It's been lengthy, but it's been fair, and that's all we ask for. Through the various submittals with staff, by the way, I like the electronic filing, that's great. We have worked through all of the issues. The plan now meets the various aspects of the land development ordinance, specifically excluding this issue in front of us tonight. We have made our resubmittal just this past week, which addressed two or three comments, including adding an approval signature block on one of the plans, but we believe we're there. As you know, the site is within a commercial district. There is no residential around. We don't have any adverse impacts in that regard. We maintain and or enhance both the vehicular and pedestrian access in the area, and maintaining safe circulation for pedestrians and vehicles in that area. The staff report's accurate. We agree with the fact that we believe we meet the land development ordinance, and look forward to moving forward with this. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak in support of the application? I think that might be all of the witnesses. I'll let Mr. Cook come back.
Mr. Mayor, all I want to do is formally move into evidence exhibits D through I that have been testified to. Thank you.
Okay. Let's see. At this time, I would invite anyone to cross-examine the witnesses who testified in support of the request. I guess that would be the town.
So you live for this.
Good evening. The town, we don't feel the need to cross-examine anybody, and we don't have any further comments on the matter at this time.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I would invite those who would wish to speak in opposition to the request. Anyone? I see no one. And so any additional information from town staff or the town attorney?
We're good.
Okay. And now I'll ask the representative for the town currently seated in the town attorney's seat if everything's in order. Okay. And before I close the public hearing, I'll ask either party if they believe any new evidence warrants a continuance of the hearing or any reason to continue this hearing. I see no one. Moving forward. So I'll close the public comment portion of the hearing and we'll begin the deliberation phase of the hearing and open it up to council members for their comments.
I have one question more related to traffic, and I don't know if it's to you or to engineering, but when we create the criteria for parking spaces, we heard about the busy day on Saturday, but we didn't hear anything about the busy days during the Christmas holidays and that, where when you look in aggregate to the whole area over there, there's a chronic parking problem. So I guess the question I have is that just an understood given that you can't plan for a whole year for a limited seasonal activity? I guess I was a little surprised there wasn't any pushback to the fact that that area gets so congested during the season, especially the holiday season.
I'll take a stab at it. They did a sample size of 2 days, one day during 2 days in April. Statistically, I'm not sure that's a big sample size, as you alluded to. There's other seasons of the year that may be more peaking. So I think that question may be more appropriate for them as testimony is why do they feel that was the peak day during the year that represents their peak parking area time of the year.
It's fine to ask that question, but I guess I think the bigger surprise is that as a staff trying to protect the community over there, why aren't we asking that question?
Well, and our parking standards aren't written to park Christmas Eve.
Well,
anyways, obviously.
I mean, I understand. That's the point I was trying to make. Is that so we don't write them that way, and there's no way that we factor that in.
Correct. The intent of some of our parking requirements are actually to reduce unused parking, and if you park to the maximum day, you end up with unused parking for the majority of the year.
You do understand the concern of a death of 1,000 cuts. I mean, it's a zoo over there.
Correct.
But the additional parking out of season also helps, I think, with the holiday parking. Is that right?
Correct. There's additional 51 spaces that don't appear in the required number that they use. They're only allowed to use March through June. So that accounts for some of it.
That's a fair point. I mean, I'm trying to understand our guidelines and understand why that was not maybe pushed a little bit.
And we actually just reduced our parking standards. It used to be 1 per 200, now it's 1 per 250. So we went from 5 per 1,000 to 4 per 1,000 because we had so much unused parking at these large shopping centers.
I think one of the overhead images we saw in the presentation really spoke to how much the site can be overparked, You asked a fair question, Jack, you really did. But I don't think there's a lot of people going to Lowe's to, buy mulch and trees and plants and things on Christmas. There might be more people going to Verizon to buy a phone for Christmas, or people, maybe buying a washer and dryer or something, But
they sell them there.
Yeah.
No, look, I was just trying to get an understanding of the criteria because, if you go around and you look at certain places to park, and I was just at a place the other day, and for the life of me, I can't remember it right now. I wish I could. But the parking stalls are so narrow that there's no normal car that can fit in. And we haven't quite
you have a big car.
We haven't quite reached, the smart car stage where everybody has these little mini wind-up toys, So what's happening is you're creating smaller lots, less parking, and you create a lot of problems with parking where, you know, all it takes is one to take a third of another stall, and then, you know the drill. We've all experienced it going.
But the sizes of our spots have not changed. We're still pretty wide.
Correct. Standard parking space is 9 by 18, hasn't changed. We don't have.
I just want to understand our rationale.
Yeah, and I'll also add that the Lowe's.
I got the message.
Lowe's was also one of the instigators of us going back and looking at our parking standards. And Lowe's functions a little differently. It's a large warehouse store. Their racking system, they have wider aisles. It's not your traditional Walmart where you have very tight aisles jam-packed with goods. So on this particular site, that may also play into some of their needs or their perceived needs more so than on another site in Crossroads where it's more traditional retail.
One question I have is this Verizon site replacing the existing Verizon site across the street?
I will defer to the applicant, but that is my understanding.
That's what they said.
Well then, so at the end of the day, really, how much extra traffic is being generated because it's already there across the street?
Yeah.
So
That's fair, and then the argument is it's safer over there. I could understand the point.
And I do have a traffic question, and it's probably not the fault of anybody, but it's the existing design over there. And like I said, I'm over there a lot because I live about a mile from there. So, and I'm going to be waving my hands, but if you're coming out on the McDonald's to make a left.
Coming out of McDonald's, making a left on the meeting?
On the meeting.
Okay.
Or the H.H. Gregg making a left. This is in a busy time. And you got somebody across the way, and the roads are like this, not lined up. One's here, one's there, and they're making a right, and you got people coming both ways, and that's a hazard. And when you add more to that mix, that concerns me. But again, I don't think that's the fault or responsibility. That was with the original design of this area.
Correct, and this
But it's a
plan's not touching those
concern.
curb lines.
Yeah, it's a concern that I have with that area.
Well, with the new McDonald's, you have less trees, so you can now see the traffic coming.
It's a green McDonald's.
That's true.
I would just say that I have felt for a long time that the town has overparked its commercial buildings, and I'm really glad to see this. I wish more developments would take a look at how many spots are really used and make wise use of our commercial places rather than going and taking new land to make into a commercial place with a very large parking lot. So I'm actually very excited about this. I'm glad to see it, and I hope that it's the beginning of more of these to come. Because I actually shop on Black Friday, and I observe the parking spots, and Crossroads has an excessive amount of parking spots. If they don't get used on Black Friday,
They don't get used.
they don't get used. So with that, unless somebody else wants to say something, I'd go ahead and make a motion.
I do have another question. You mentioned trees, Jack, and there's a big tree on that side, and we're already getting complaints about the other side of Meeting Street. Are we going to lose that tree too?
There are 2 big trees on the site.
Right.
Yes, there's 2.
There's one at the intersection in this area right here underneath this text. That tree's being saved. There's a tree protection fence going up around it. Some of the reasons the sidewalk design is the way it is in relation to that tree and trying to work around existing pedestals. There's a second large tree that sits right here. That tree is in excess of 30 inches. However, it was evaluated by a forester, and I've been out there because I went and posted the sign. It is in decline. The trees are not in the best of health. It has tip dieback. There are large structural branches in the crown that are broken. Staff looked at that when we looked at this plan and made the determination that given it's in a regional activity center, we'd be better served by, given the narrowness of this plantable island, we'd be better served by improving the pedestrian connectivity now that we have the opportunity and planting additional trees to hopefully have large trees in the future. So there's 2 trees, one of them is coming out, one of them is not.
Okay.
It is not considered a champion due to the health.
The sick one's coming out. Okay, got you. And do you need Mr. Hills to walk you through the motion?
I have I know this isn't a site review. Will the site plan review come to staff, or will it come to council for this particular parcel?
This is the site plan.
So if we have questions, for instance, about the dumpster and its location and what screening might be, because it's right next, that's a sidewalk, right?
Correct.
So the dumpster's right up on that sidewalk, no screening, no,
The enclosure is
an
next to the
enclosure.
sidewalk. We require an 8-foot masonry wall, and then there's landscape screening of the masonry wall. So you have screening of the screening, solid metal gates. I just didn't include that because
As long as they keep their door closed to their dumpster, because there's nothing worse than pulling right into a retail spot and seeing the dumpster doors wide open. It's like, hello, welcome to my business, here's my trash.
well,
You know, it's just.
is that where I mean, that's
Yeah,
how I see
that's
the
it.
doors.
Those doors are feeding
Those are
right
doors right
into
there.
the driveway, so they just need to be diligent about keeping the doors shut.
And the two sidewalks that I see, do those actually empty onto a sidewalk?
yes, there's an existing sidewalk right here. I just colored what they were proposing to make it clear
Okay, because I didn't see it colored on the map, so.
because it's existing.
All right, and then, Mr. Yerha, did I see your hand raised? No? Okay.
Anyone else before I turn it over to Ms. Robinson? Already.
Do you want to put a slide up, or do you want me to fumble my way through it?
Yep.
Yeah, hold on just a
Before
minute.
you make the motion, you probably should close the public portion of the hearing and then make the motion.
So we know we have you here for a reason.
I thought I stated that before
Well,
we got into
but you
comments.
can't, you took additional,
Oh, it took additional
Evidence.
comments. Okay, so this time I'm closing it for real. Closing the comment portion of the hearing and giving it to Ms. Robinson for the,
And I will just quickly point out, and it is in the staff report, so it's on the slide, there is additional criteria for the parking reduction, and that is the reduced number is adequate to satisfy the proposed parking demand based on the nature of the use, the availability of shared parking, and it's all listed in the worksheet, but it's all covered in your suggested motion, so.
It is covered, okay. 'Cause I
It is
could
covered.
Specify if you want me to. And that ordinance being referenced there, is that 7.8.2A1?
That is correct.
Okay. All right. I make a motion to approve the minor modification based on the fact that the modification advances the goals of ordinance 7.8.2A1, and the modification results in less visual impact, and I believe more effective environmental preservation, and it relieves a practical difficulty in developing the site.
there's a motion.
Second.
And a second. Further discussion. All in favor of this motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And with that, I'll close the public hearing.
We need a motion on the site plan?
Oh, and
Second one.
Do you have a slide?
before I
Kevin?
close the public hearing.
well, that's okay. You can close the hearing. The hearing is just closed for the purpose of, that you have closed the hearing, you don't take additional evidence.
Okay,
So you can discuss it all you want to after you close the hearing.
okay. So entertain further motions.
I move approval of the site plan because it complies with all applicable requirements of the LDO, adequately protects other property, is harmonious with surrounding development, provides safe circulation for vehicles and pedestrians, provides safe access for emergency services, and provides mitigation for traffic impacts expected to be generated.
Second.
And may I clarify for just a second? Suggested motion has a condition on it that the applicant adequately address the remaining DRC comments.
What you said.
So you're amending your motion
I am.
to include his comments?
I am.
And who
We're
is
amending
second?
the second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Further discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Was that it? Do we? Okay. I've run out of comments here, so now.
Wing it, Mayor, you're doing great.
So thank you, Mr. Hales, and thanks everyone for this public hearing. Thank you, Ms. Silverstein.
Thank you, Mr. Silverstein.
See you.
We're now at item F1, the Luter Shop Road annexation, rezoning, and comprehensive plan consistency statement. And before we begin, we need a motion to remove this from the table.
So moved.
Second?
There's a motion and a second. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, and it's off the table. Mrs. Grannon of our staff will present the presentation and explanation of changes since we last saw this request. We previously heard the Planning and Zoning Board's recommendation, and they have not met on this topic, so we're not going to hear that presentation again. Ms. Grannon.
Thank you. Good evening. You'll recall this was presented to you last month. There were some concerns. It was tabled so that the applicant could revisit some zoning conditions, and we could get language in front of staff to review. I'm just going to briefly go over the history of the request again. This is the request for annexation and rezoning of approximately 76.38 acres at the 1500 block of Luter Shop Road. This shows the subject property, which is also requested for annexation. And highlighted in red where the plan sits within the Chatham-Cary Joint Land Use Plan. Land use designation is low-density residential. The existing zoning is a Chatham County designation of R1. The applicant's proposing R8 conditional use. When this was presented to you initially, the density limit was 2 dwelling units per acre. Permitted uses were limited to single-family dwellings, neighborhood recreation, public or private park, religious institution, and public or private school. And that no construction other than roads or infrastructure would take place until a eastbound right turn lane and westbound left turn lane were provided at the entrance to the subject property. The design subject to DOT approval and Town of Cary approval. When this returned to the Planning and Zoning Board in response to concerns from adjacent property owners, the applicant introduced a minimum lot size of 17,500 square feet adjacent to the southern and western property lines, and then an internal minimum lot size of 12,000 square feet along with a 40-foot wide semi-opaque buffer along the southern property line, and added a condition that no school, park, public or private athletic field, or related lighting, parking, or ancillary uses would be located within 500 feet of that subject property line. And that condition was added to address concerns from some of the neighbors. Here's an exhibit the applicant provided showing the 17,500 square foot minimum lot area in the pale yellow, and then the buffer area on the property. As we discussed at the last meeting, there was a traffic study, and it did address suggested mitigations at these intersections highlighted in green. At the last council meeting, you recall the applicant had offered some conditions, but not all, to address these proposed mitigations. They have now addressed all the traffic study mitigations with voluntarily offered zoning conditions. At the intersection of Morrisville Parkway and Green Level Church Road, full signal warrant analysis prior to subdivision plat submittal, and the owner to construct and install that signal if it is warranted. If not warranted, then the obligation shall expire and the condition shall be deemed satisfied. At the intersection of 751 and Luter Shop Road, again prior to submittal of a subdivision plat, the owner shall construct and install a 50-foot long northbound right turn lane with an appropriate taper onto NC 751 highway at its intersection with Luter Shop Road. This condition went into a little bit more detail because it's outside of our jurisdiction. There was some concern about acquisition of right-of-way. So language was reviewed with our engineering and planning staff and our legal department, and language added that the owner would exercise their best efforts to acquire the necessary right-of-way. If not able to acquire that necessary right-of-way after exhausting those efforts, the owner may request assistance from any government entity at a state or local level with condemnation powers. And if those attempts were not successful and the applicant could show written proof that no such entity agreed to assist with the acquisition, then the obligation would expire and the condition would be deemed satisfied. As you recall, the Planning and Zoning Board recommended this for approval 6-3. And this concludes staff's presentation. I'm available, as is the applicant, if you have further questions.
I'll open it up to council members for questions, comments.
I don't have a question. I just want to thank the applicant for coming forward with those 2 new conditions, because they certainly address the concerns I had at the last meeting, and when appropriate, I'd be happy to make a motion.
Anyone else for comments?
Yeah, I'll wait until after the motion's made.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So we need to move the annexation first and then the rezoning, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I move approval of annexation petition 13A01.
Second.
It's a motion and a second. In the discussion, I'm going to ask the town attorney do we kind of need a show of hands of what we're thinking about the rezoning, because
So that we don't
They didn't
annex something
want
that
to-
doesn't get resigned.
annex?
We haven't been asked for that, but that may be something that you consider, just getting an idea.
So in the discussion, I guess if we could kind of state our preference about the rezoning, that would help.
It's my
I
intent
assume
to
you're not
move
going to vote for the annexation if you're not going to vote for the rezoning, so it might take care of itself, but I guess that would be the question I would ask council. Is anyone planning on voting for the annexation that's not planning on voting on the rezoning? Is that a fair question? May I ask that?
I think that sounds fine.
Okay. And if not, we'll proceed with everything else.
I think Ms. Robinson had a comment.
Ms. Bush?
So I'm confused with your question.
They don't want to annex unless it's going to be rezoned.
Yes, I understand that.
And so if the annexation fails, then obviously the rezoning is going to fail unless somebody's going to vote for one or not the other.
Oh, yeah, I wouldn't do that. No, I can give my comments.
Yes, please.
So one of the things that I'm concerned about this area is this is being one of the newest members to the joint Cary Chatham joint plan. This is probably the first real rezoning that's coming through since that plan, and it's also the furthest west. Right, so that's just something to keep in mind. We don't have fire services and police services yet that are within, as my conversation with the chief said, between our 5-minute realm. It's more like the 6-minute response time. So there are some considerations that as we move further and further west in order to support our citizens, we need to be aware of their health and safety and keep in mind that our level of service there might not be as good as it is other areas where the population is closer. The second comment I have is that this is in Chatham County, yet the town of Cary. And we don't know who's going to live here, just like we didn't know in the previous Waycroft Preserve. These could be families, most likely, depending on what types of houses are put there. And there are no schools, no public schools in Chatham County this side of the Jordan Lake. So what I hate to use the word, but what we're doing is condemning these citizens who might choose to buy their house there to Chatham County School that are more than 45-minute to an hour-and-a-half bus ride away. So I know that that's not something we're necessarily supposed to be considering when it comes to school capacity and those types of things, but it is something that weighs on my mind that if Roberts Road works out, there's going to be a high school not far from them. Now, Panther Creek's not far from them, but they'll have to go because Chatham County has no plans now to build any schools on this side of the lake. They'll be, somewhat forced to do a charter or private or whatever. And I know it's their personal responsibility to think about that, but it's just something that weighs on me heavily that we've already heard from people who live in the peninsula in areas in Chatham County. Most of those kids have ended up going to private schools because it's too far away. It's too long of a bus ride for them. So it's just something that weighs heavily, and I just thought I'd share that with council.
Okay. I don't disagree with you that it's a problematic to not have the school there. Everybody who buys a house needs to be cognizant of what county he's buying into, where his local schools are. This is incumbent upon the buyer of the property. As a person who sat on the committee for so many years to try to create the land use plan, it is a relief to me that one of the first projects coming forward complies with the land use plan. And furthermore, what I like about it is that the applicant went beyond what was really required by the land use plan and by our ordinances to be a good neighbor to those to the south and to add that extra buffer, to put in conditions that allayed their concerns about being in close proximity to the school and other impacts, the larger lots along the border. And I just really appreciate that. I would really like to see more applicants take that into consideration when they're going in and trying to comply with the land use plan is our baseline. It's really nice when they're also a good neighbor. And I know we have some other projects coming in Chatham County, so I hope that everybody's watching this one and seeing how it's done and just being considerate to the fact that it's sensitive for the town of Cary to be growing into Chatham County.
Okay. Other comments? Are we ready for a motion?
There's a motion
The
on the
motion's
table.
already made.
The motion to approve the annexation petition's on the table.
Right.
Oh, yeah, I'm ready to vote on
Misstated.
it.
I mean, are we ready to vote on the motion?
Yes.
All right, all in favor of the annexation, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed,
Nay.
vote carries 6-1. Now a motion for the
I
rezoning.
move approval of rezoning 12 REZ 33.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Further discussion? All in favor of the rezoning, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed,
Nay.
6-1. Now the
Move
comprehensive plan for consistency.
Move approval of the comprehensive plan consistency statement.
Second.
There's a motion and a second discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed,
Nay.
motion carries 6-1. Thank you. We now move to committee reports. Mr. Frantz, we're at item H, the Planning and Development Committee reports. There are 2 discussion items. The first is the LDO amendments, round 27. I'm going to let you, as committee chair, make any comments that you have, and then we'll ask Ms. Bierman of our staff to present more information to us.
Thank you, Mayor. Given the town's efforts and such in downtown, and that the board itself couldn't really reach an agreement, we were kind of, I don't want to say all over the place, but we were kind of on both sides and in the middle of it. We felt that it best that this issue come to council for full discussion and consideration, but basically it's to consider amending the LDO to allow the subdivision and construction of new detached residences inside the downtown HMXD district. We've had 2 requests. One has come from an existing business owner, one has come from an existing historic homeowner. That they would like to, in the business's case, they would like to construct a single-family residence behind the business. Their intent is to live in the home and then work in the business that abuts Academy Street. The homeowner, the historic homeowner's request is to possibly create some cottage home, I guess, townhome condo kind of thingy. I'm not really exactly sure what the wording is, but they're looking to possibly develop 2 to 3 units behind that home. Some of us, and I'll let them speak to it, but there was concerns expressed about what this may do to historic properties in the downtown area. There was also points made that so many of our goals downtown are to bring additional residents and traffic downtown, so this kind of furthered those goals. And then my personal comments was, or feeling was that the 2 requests that we've had, I think, are reasonable. Staff is recommending that we kind of expand this to encompass the whole historic district, and I don't know that I'm entirely comfortable with that. As much as I hate to add another process to the process, I almost feel like that maybe every one of these requests should come to council for consideration and approval. I hate that. I would love a one-size-fits-all kind of thing, but I think in the historic district and downtown, the uniqueness of the lots, the homes, their historic significance, the businesses and so forth, it just every case is unique, and I think we almost maybe need to treat it as such. But we're looking for the council's comments and thoughts and opinions, and I would open it up to my 2 colleagues on P&D for their thoughts. Mr. Yerha?
Sure. You did a good job there, Mr. Frantz, in explaining the pros and cons. This actually, in the staff report clearly states this, kind of runs against the philosophy of the HMXD district by creating single-family residences there. But the staff has very creatively, give them a lot of credit for that, found a way to accommodate these 2 requests by looking at the district, sub-district by sub-district, and found that in the historic district part of downtown, that perhaps additional residences are okay, because we're not going to develop those historic districts with more commercial or more intense development. So perhaps it's okay to, and I'm sure Mrs. Bierman can explain this better than I can, but it's better to, it's more acceptable to allow this in the historic district because of those reasons. But doing this on a blanket basis, like Mr. Frantz said, opens this up. Now, these 2 requests may, and I say may because I'm not sure, but may turn out to be very well done. Certainly the one I'm more familiar with than the other, where the guy wants to live in the house behind his shop, I mean, it's a reasonable request. There's no telling that that will always be that way, though. Should he leave or sell that, I imagine there could be issues. But beyond the two requests we have now, to open this up to any historic property downtown to allow residences crammed in behind there, I'm not comfortable with that. I know new guidelines would have to be developed to allow this to happen. Could result in flag lots, which may or may not be okay downtown. I personally don't like flag lots. But I just think there's more to this, the recommendation, than I give them credit for trying to accommodate these two well-meaning requests. But I think by doing this, we're opening ourselves up to too much down the road. So that's why I objected to this at the P&D meeting.
Well, you folks have left little to say. You did a great job. You know, this is one of those situations where a little is good and too much would be too much, and it would go against what we're trying to achieve downtown. I do think it's a creative solution and a creative idea about allowing some things like this in the historic district. I think that the details are what would matter. We're not talking about single-family home subdivisions downtown. We're talking about these unique situations. I really like Mr. Frantz's idea about, as much as this might impact us, each of these coming to us for discussion. I know it raises issues about flag lots. It raises issues about where the driveways would go, particularly thinking about the historic home proposal, which would not subdivide the property. They would be part of that parcel. Creates issues with mailboxes, how mail gets delivered, EMS response, things like that. On the other hand, I think what the staff asked us to do was, and this is why we wanted to bring it to you, was whether to go forward and develop any further language to bring to us. I would really like to get public input on this, unless it's a no-starter with you guys, because I'd like to hear what the people downtown think about it and the people who come downtown think about it.
Other comments?
I guess the question I have, if we leave it at case by case, do we run the risk of, if we have a case that we deny, that we run the risk of that being overturned? I mean, the courts have a strange way of behaving, and they don't use logic. And, well, you know that. I mean, it's just the way it is. So if we're looking at case by case, which I think is, that intent is great, because we're trying to start with baby steps and learn along the way. I guess the question, I'm just thinking out loud here, because this is kind of unique. Are we really putting ourselves at risk with future decisions? And I'm not sure we do, but I'm just kind of saying it out loud for discussion.
Ms. Bierman, if the council was amenable to directing staff to continue to work on this and somehow try to come up with some language, that would go through a public hearing process and all of that, correct?
Well, we brought this to you in anticipation of looking at something to incorporate in round 27 of the LDO amendments. We'll be bringing more text with the larger set of amendments at your next P&D meeting, because this was a little bit different in nature, and we wanted to get some feedback from you preliminarily on this first, to confirm that you indeed wanted us to proceed with developing anything. And recognizing that there were some issues that we felt with it, given the goals of the town center and some of those factors, but yet trying to give an option for, if you did want to accommodate this, some ways to try to do that would make it as narrow as possible, short of having what I think you were suggesting possibly as a special use, which everything would go to town council as quasi-judicial. And then if it went that route, then we would be developing standards for you to look at and making that determination. If it was not a special use, then we would need to narrow the geographic area down. And in looking at some of the issues that come up and trying to, we did feel that some of the concerns with having a less intense use in the town center would be lessened if they were properties that had the historic structures on it, because you could also be meeting the goal of, in some cases, helping to preserve and maintain those structures, and those would not be parcels that would likely to be redeveloped and intensified anyway. So we're trying to find some ways to narrow that down to give that flexibility to the extent that you would like to have that.
But to Ms. Adcock's point, so there's definitely a public input process.
If it goes the LDO route, but if it goes the special use, quasi-judicial, it's a policy, and that doesn't go to public hearing, right?
No, that would still be, either way, it's still an amendment to the LDO,
Okay.
because
Then
right now,
that's
the single family is not an allowed use in the HMXD, so we would need to create an ordinance amendment either way.
To Mr. Smith's point, if we were to go the special use route, I don't know that that really opens up the council to potential legal ramifications or lawsuits if one were to be denied, because at the end of the day, the council has the right to grant a special use or not grant a special use, just like with
And I
rezonings.
think that, when you look at what the special use is intended to do, it's really saying that this is a use that applied to a certain district. That this use may, if the situation is right and it's the right location, it's a use that may be appropriate in the district, as opposed to a use that's permitted by right, which you're saying this use is always appropriate in that district. So by having, if you were saying that it's a special use in some areas within, say, the HMXD district or the historic district. In some cases, this use may be a new single-family residence, may be an appropriate use, and you spell out the things that would need to be addressed in order to make that determination, then, it would seem that that would be an appropriate use of that tool.
Again, my thoughts would be that I would like to see us continue to pursue, but with direction to staff that probably targeting the historic district, but not a by right, something.
Right.
More of a special use.
Right.
You make
I
that
would
the
second
form
that
of...
motion if you
Yeah,
made that
good.
the form of a motion.
Was that your motion, Mr. Frantz?
that
But
your
you got a second over there.
Make a motion that we direct staff to continue to work on this process with focusing on the historic district in the downtown, but that we're not looking to make this a by right. We're looking for possibly special use or what other options staff may better come up with.
I'll second.
And the second discussion.
Good job.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
6-1. Thank you. See, that takes us to the second item that the committee reviewed, and it's changes to the development process we discussed at our last retreat. And Ms. Frantz, I want to again let you make your comments. And we have Mr. Alma available.
Gotcha. This was another fun one. There was really, and I got to commend staff. I think you all did an amazing job on this in the way that they broke it down and categorized everything so that we could actually understand it. And even going into the meeting, I think all of us had we were still confused. There was just a lot in there, but the way they even presented it at the meeting, it really helped us better understand and get comfortable at least with the simple changes. So the committee actually recommended just going ahead and directing staff to proceed with the simple changes. And then there was some that may conflict with state law or very problematic for the town. We decided not to proceed with those. And then there was three other ones that they're pretty detailed, complicated, and the committee, I think, felt that we would benefit from a work session on these particular items. Not its own work session. We don't feel we need 2 hours to discuss this, but at one of our future work sessions, this could be one of the work session topics. So that was kind of our recommendation.
Committee members?
I believe we were 100% in agreement.
Well said.
It sounds reasonable to me.
And for those of us who just read it and weren't in the P&D and then watched it, I'm so glad that you made that decision.
Well, before committing all of us to a work session, we thought it would be good if y'all weighed in on that.
Yeah.
Sounds good. No, I like that idea.
I think y'all did a great job on that one.
Any other comments? How about a motion?
I was going to ask, do we need a motion just to direct the clerk to schedule a future work session to discuss the more complicated changes regarding the development processes?
Category 3, I think it was called.
Yeah.
Second.
Motion second, discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All righty, that takes us to old and new business. This is item I-1, the Veterans Freedom Park Agreement. This is an agreement between the town, the National Veterans Freedom Park Foundation, and SAS Institute, my employer and the employer of my colleague, Mayor Pro Tem Adcock. Council members have duty to vote on contractual items like this unless their vote is prohibited for conflict of interest purposes. Neither I nor any member of my family will receive a direct benefit from this contract, and neither I nor any member of my family have a financial interest in this contract. And I'll ask Ms. Adcock if that's the same for her.
It is.
Okay. So, having that all cleared out of the way, I'll recognize Mr. McRaney of our staff who will present the report. Mr. McRaney.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Staff is requesting Council approval of the agreement for Veterans Freedom Park. This agreement will be between the town, the National Veterans Freedom Park Foundation, and SAS. National Veterans Freedom Park Foundation owns and manages the park, which is 12.75 acres in size, located in North Harrison. And in 2010, SAS proposed constructing a spire and associated parking lot and make those improvements. They also proposed that upon completion that the park, again, owned by the foundation, and the spire would be transferred to the town. In October 2011, Council actually approved this agreement. And again, the agreement basically states that SAS would design and build the spire, that upon completion of the construction of that spire, that the foundation would agree to transfer the property to the town, and that the town would agree to own and maintain the site, and that if there were any future improvements, that the town would agree to include both SAS and the foundation and inform them of any of those changes in an advisory capacity. Upon approval of this agreement in 2011, SAS decided that the spire, the height of it, which was approved at 2000, well, which was part of the site plan and was 120 feet in height, that it would be reduced to 90. Approximately 2 years have passed since that approval. And in that meantime, the agreement, which is virtually the same, the only change that was made, aside from the height, and the height is not mentioned in the agreement, it's just part of the site plan, that the foundation went back as part of the agreement, and they insisted that the current name, which is Veterans Freedom Park, be officially retained. And that's part of the agreement right now. Other than that, all the wording is identical from what was approved in 2011. Staff has brought this back for Council's approval, again, given the time that has passed. And before we go into any discussion or answer any questions, then before you, what you see then is the plan view. Of course, the circular area is the actual spire. There is a 15-car parking lot, which will be gravel, but of course the entrance driveway will be concrete. Then you see a semicircular area off the parking lot. All of the existing current monuments on the site will be retained and moved to that semicircular area. This is a view basically from the entrance of the parking lot. You can see the spire along with flags. And again, if you look at the semicircular area, you can see those are all the existing monuments. View from Harrison, you can see the parking lot and again the spire. You get a sense of the height of it. This is as you walk from the parking lot towards the memorial and the spire. Here you are within the plaza of the spire. I might add that you see the walls there. They're insets. They're blank right now. There would be a future potential project where those could be sculptures added to that, maybe representing or celebrating each one of the armed services. And then here is a view of what it will look like at night. So council is recommending approval of the agreement, and I'll answer any questions that you might
I have
have.
a question, Mayor. Mr. Rainey, McRainey, would you please speak to what the speaker during public speaks out spoke to? Why this process was a bit different than typical park public, and this is, a lot of people consider this public art, and the public art board was not involved. And also whether or not it was a closed process, as he stated.
Again, the process started back in 2010. SAS themselves held a neighborhood meeting at Cary Academy. I attended that. A number of residents from Beechtree in the adjoining neighborhoods attended. There was also the Public Art Advisory Board has actually reviewed this twice, just recently this past year, but the first time in December of 2010. And that Public Art Advisory meeting was in fact also a public meeting. So the public got to come, and in fact, the first part of the meeting was a public meeting, and then the second part was the actual Public Art Advisory Board meeting. And lastly, I would just say that since 2010, there have been 4 staff reports. This is the 4th staff report regarding this topic. And so, there has been public input. And of course, when the town accepts this, if there were any future improvements, any future planning, any future capital funding that would go towards that, the town would have its typical public input process. And again, going back to the agreement, it would include both staff from SAS and from the foundation as part of that process.
I want to thank you so much. I just think it was really important that the public hear that public art was involved and that this was in no way a closed process.
Right.
So, and I think that was very important. I appreciate your providing that background for all of us.
Okay, other comments?
I would just add, thank you, Ms. Adcock, for clarifying, and Mr. McRaney, very helpful. I think there was a lot of misinformation presented earlier in the meeting that needed that clarification. And regarding keeping the name, the Veterans Freedom Park, I'm really struggling with how any reasonable, patriotic, red-blooded American could have a problem with that name whatsoever. I love the name. I'm glad to see that it stays.
Any other comments or a motion?
Well, the only other comment I have is I think that this just shows our continued respect, commitment to the veterans in our community. The addition of all of the flags in the council chambers, having a veteran on council.
In more ways than one. I think the veteran ought to make the motion, too.
Yeah, so I would make a motion that we continue with the process and move forward with the Veterans Freedom Park Agreement.
Jack wants to make the formal motion.
no.
Is that okay with you?
It's fine.
Being our veteran, isn't that nice?
I am.
You continue with that motion, you withdraw it?
I withdraw it.
Okay.
because
Go for it, Jack.
I want him to do that.
Well, thank you for recognizing the veteran in more ways.
That was World
It just is what it is, honey.
The big one. And I guess it would be, being in a cav unit, our motto is seek, strike, and destroy. So I'm not sure that's quite right for this situation. But the military, I think it's really important, as you said, that we go back to this. There was a lot. There was input, and I can tell you that in working with that board and Ann Goodnight and SAS, there was a lot that wanted this to be subtle, wanted it to be reflective. And I think, as you can see by the drawings and the visions, I think it is very respectful, no matter what your point of view is, no matter how strong it is. And so, having said that, I agree. I can tell you that also mentioned earlier in the speaking was some comments about the American Legion. The American Legion is 3 million members strong. They donated last year over 4 million community hours of public service to their local communities. They've raised over $4 million to help vets that are disabled, struggling through transition. They're a great organization. The VFW in partnership is another 2 million strong. So you've got two very broad-based organizations that represent every component, every fabric of our society. And I think we should always keep them in our thoughts and prayers as well as we do our people serving in harm's way right now. That said, I'd like to make a motion that we accept this the staff report as presented.
And as the daughter of a Korean War veteran, I second that motion.
You can third that motion.
I'm good.
Okay. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Council. I might just add, schedule-wise, the SAS is ready to go to construction, and we would hope to dedicate this Memorial Day 2014. That's the plan.
Oh, awesome.
And now that I've announced it publicly, I'm probably in trouble if we don't meet it, but that's what our goal is.
You got to have a dream to make a dream come true, Doug.
So we're now ready to move into closed session, and I would entertain a motion.
Pursuant to General Statute 143-318.11A3, 4, and 5, I move that we hold a closed session to consult with attorneys employed by and/or retained by the town in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege between the attorneys and the town, to discuss matters relating to the location or expansion of industries or other businesses in the town, including agreement on a tentative list of economic development incentives that may be offered by the town in negotiations, and to instruct the town staff concerning the position to be taken on by or on behalf of the town in negotiating the price and material terms of contracts, proposed contracts for acquisitions of properties owned by Ann B. Mills, 2428 Carpenter Upchurch Road, Cary, North Carolina, 27519. Carol M. Patterson at 2436 Carpenter Upchurch Road, Cary, North Carolina, 27519. And to prevent the disclosure of information that is made privileged or confidential by General Statute 143-318.10E.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are now in closed session.
will reconvene our council meeting. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion, second. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.
This has been a production of Cary TV. Visit the Town of Cary's website at townofcary.org.